Hello and welcome to News Today with me, Kamini Nyamani Amano. Here are some of the stories you should expect over the next hour. Government says the planned implementation of a 17.5% VAT levy on banking services will not start next month. Barcelona will be able to buy for the hour. I've read back with those details. Hello again, this is News Today with me, Kamini Nyamani Amano. Now, the Finance Ministry, as well as the Ghana Revenue Authority, says, contrary to some media reports, salaries, savings, deposits, loans and payment of checks are all exempted from the 17.5% VAT charge on banking services. In a statement released on Tuesday, April 22, 2014, and signed by the Deputy Finance Minister Kashil Atuforsen, both institutions made it clear that the new VAT will only affect the not-core financial services such as data processing, legal accounting, actuarial notary and consultant services. According to them, the VAT Act 870 is not new and has been in place since 1998 and requires the banks to register for VAT and pay VAT on the inputs they use to render their services. The statement also indicated that the impact of the VAT is not the full 17.5% as speculated, since VAT registered businesses can also offset the input VAT against their output VAT. Already, banking clients have raised concerns about the new VAT. We are joined over the telephone by Dr. Akwesi Chumesi Ampo, for his president of the Chartered Institute of Certified Accountants. Thank you very much, Dr. Ampo, for joining us here on News Today.
Yeah, thank you. You're welcome.
And let me first take your initial comments on the different views and varying comments we've had over the charging of VAT, the 70.5% on bank services.
Yeah, basically VAT is a tax on goods and services. And we all know that we are looking at the input tax and output tax. In fact, if we are looking at that of a trader has got input tax and what? And output tax. Input tax on purchases, output tax on sales. Now, the banks do not have what we call input tax per se. In other words, they don't, of course, generate any input tax. And so if we are coming to the scheme by which the financial institutions are going to be taxed, then it is going to be the what? That of what? That is output, which is going to the tax on the services which they are rendering there. Now, any tax which they are rendering there generates fees and commissions, right? And if they are selling those services to their various customers, equally, it has to generate, of course, 17.5% output tax. That is on fees and commissions. Now, Nigeria, for instance, and then South Africa started, and at least making sure that the banks also fall into the VAT scheme. Now, they were reluctant, of course, to start at first. Why? Because the bank per se do not have what they call an input tax, which is, of course, going to net off for the output tax. Most European countries have exempted financial institutions and the insurance companies basically because of the input tax issue. So now, if the finance minister, of course, is bringing into the main scheme, that is the financial institutions, then we are looking at the output tax in this case. My professional knowledge is that if the banks do not have input tax, they are going to have output tax on their sales or services they rent to their customers. They may either absorb it, the 70%, or shift it on the consumer, either way. So that means that even though at the moment the GRA may come out with some specifications as to the areas by which they must levy and all that, the difficulty is how do you monitor these sort of fees and services, which is going to generate a 17.5% VAT anyway. And how is the customer also going to monitor that? So that is the issue.
Right. The GRA tells us they have a system that will help do that. But at this point, let me invite George Ahu. George Ahu is a tax expert. George, we are told that at the end of the day, we may not be paying 17.5%. We'll pay about 2.4%. And because of something called an input tax and an output tax. You're a tax expert. Take us through that.
Yes. Unfortunately, reception or the way the recording is going, yours is very low. And I don't know if you are hearing me clearly.
I can.
Okay. In the first place, what they are calling value-added tax 17.5%, I will refer to that as output tax 17.5% or sales tax 17.5%, because I hold a conviction that what they are calling value-added tax 17.5% is wrong. And it seems, or it is a basic flaw that is making things difficult to explain. So I would explain using 17.5% as sales tax rate or output tax rate. Now, what government we want to do now is to levy value-added tax, that is VAT, on bank operators. In actual fact, it is looking to me like what has happened in the case of import VAT. For import VAT, when goods come to the port, the CIF, that is cost, insurance, and freight, is taxed. And it is called value-added tax. But when you have the correct definition for value-added tax, you see that when goods come to the port, there is no value addition at the port. So there cannot be any value-added tax on the CIS. But unfortunately, because of the wrong definition, the imports are taxed as value-added tax. And that transfers down to the society as double taxation.
Right. So, George, is this true when we are told that at the end of the day, the kind of services that would incur taxes, the amount of VAT you'll be paying will only be 2.4 and not 17.5?
That 2.4 they are calling is, for me, it should be 3.5.
3.5, okay.
Yes, because on the basis that when the sales tax rate was 15%, the flat rate was 3%. For sanity, as they have increased it to 17.5%, for sanity, that is, if they want to maintain 15 to 3, then the 17.5 should attract 3.5 and not 2.4 as they are suggesting.
Right.
Those people who are suggesting 2.4.
George, what I want to understand is, as a consumer going to the bank to deal with one service or the other, how do I know that indeed I'm being charged or I'm paying a tax of, if it's pushed to me, like Dr. Ampofo was saying, if it's pushed to the consumer, I'm actually paying the 3.5 and not an entire 17.5?
As a consumer?
Yes.
Yes. You see, because of the wrong definition which they have forced down on us, the consumer pays sales tax or output tax to the operator. Consumer does not pay value-added tax to the consumer. So all those experts, minister, and all those people who have come to talk about, and they are talking about the 17.5% as value-added tax. They have refused to accept the fact that they are wrong when they mention 17.5% as the value-added tax. And they would never be able to explain anything to anybody clearly.
So, Dr. Abwafo, if we are to pay VAT on services, because for some consumers, the messages we've had from our banks is the fact that we would pay VAT on services that earn charges, and then it includes everything else.
Yes. In fact, I did mention Nigeria and South Africa started with category of services. But in the end, the implementation was quite difficult, and then it became something which is uniform. In other words, every service which the banks render attract VAT. In the end, that is where we are going to. And that is a fact, because VAT is rendered on services anyway. So,
here we are being told that the VAT will only be on non-core banking services. What are these?
If they are referring to non-core banking services, yeah, the services which, of course, the core banking service is the one which mainly were interest, you see, to loans and all that. These are the core ones, and the transfers and transactions were referring to loans and all that, as I said. The non-core, right, this year, withdrawals and all those ones this year, of course, we're not going to attract VAT anyway. But if you look at it technically, it is going to be on the services generally rendered by the bank sector. And that is how it is going to be in the end, because or they may have to perhaps change maybe the law, so that specifically they come up with those areas. Because if you say non-core banking services and the core banking services, who defines what, as you are saying? Is it the bank who is going to define, or GRA who is going to define, or Minister of Finance who is going to define? Right, this year. So they have numerous of services in there, numerous, right, this have services. And the GRA should be able to research, further to know the areas which perhaps they will call core banking service and those are non-core banking services. Now, it is quite not clear, to anybody. It's quite ambiguous to say that non-core and then core. The banks themselves technically know the distinctions, and the services, of course, and when they are going to cut across both core and non-core services. Yeah.
There seem to be a lot of challenges with people understanding this, and even from the stakeholder institutions in this, giving us different information at different times in the conversations around this. Perhaps we chose a very wrong time to do this, Dr. Abwafo.
Yes, I will partly say so, in the sense that even in Europe, only few countries have incorporated the financial institutions and the insurance companies into the VAT scheme. And as I said, the major problem they were having is what we call the input tax of the banks. The point is, banks do not buy capital. And see, they don't buy. A trader buys, and therefore easily to come out with what you call the input tax, which is set up the output tax, in a way. But the banks do not buy capital, and that means that very difficult to find input tax when it comes to the bank. So what they will be levying is what you call the output tax on their services. And definitely it is going to shift on the consumer, or the banks will decide, okay, let's absorb it then. Or because the impact is going to be high on the consumer, let's come with a very attractive or acceptable rate of VAT, like what you are discussing now. But in the end, what we are saying is that in most advanced countries, banking institutions and insurance companies are totally outside the VAT scheme, all because of this issue of inputs and outputs, which the bank doesn't have what we call an input tax to set off, and for that matter, everything is shipped on the consumer at the end.
Right.
This is hard. So that is the whole issue, and that explains also why most countries are exempted the financial institution insurance from totally outside the VAT scheme, because they don't generate what we call the input tax.
Right. Dr. Abwafo, thank you very much. Dr. Abwafo is president of the Chartered Institute of Accountants. But I still have George Ahu over the telephone. George Ahu is a tax expert. So, George, I was asking you earlier, what is this input tax and output tax?
The input tax is output tax less value-added tax.
Oh, so which one does the consumer pay?
The consumer pays output tax to the operator.
I see. In this case, will be 3.5%, according to your calculation.
No. The consumer will pay 17.5% to the operator. That is what they when we go by what the law is saying now, on COT, that is Commission on Tax, like this. It will now include what we will call output tax. You see, it will include output tax for the consumer to pay.
So, George, what should we expect as consumers of bank products? What should we expect to pay? Should we expect to pay the full 17.5%, or actually believe what we are being told, that it will only trickle down to that, water down to 3.5%?
You see, if we go by what is going on now, and there is no change, 17.5%, you should see it expressed on if you are a customer to a bank. When they give you your slip, you should see the expression of 17.5% on your form or on your statement. Yes.
Right, George, we'll leave our conversation here for now. George, who is the tax expert. Let's move on to something else. Former Chief Executive of Savannah Accelerated Development Authority, Gilbert Eddy, says the authority could not ascertain whether Azontaba cottage industry paid any money into the guinea fowl joint venture. So that claims it entered into a joint venture with Azontaba cottage industry, an exchange program to produce and market guinea fowls. When controversy about the guinea fowl project came up last year, SADA explained that the investment was a joint venture in which the private company owned majority shares. But Gilbert Eddy, who left office almost a year after the joint venture company was formed, says he does not know whether Azontaba contributed any amount. Manasseh Asori Awene reports.
In 2012, SADA entered into a joint venture with Azontaba Cottage Industry, an exchange program to commercialize the production of guinea fowls. The joint venture company formed as a result was named SADA Azontaba Guinea Fowl Production and Marketing Company Limited. According to information at the Registrar General's Department, the two directors of the company are former CEO of SADA, Gilbert Eddy, who represented SADA, while Roland Agambire, CEO of the Agams Group, represented Azontaba. Records at the Registrar General's Department also indicate that SADA contributed 12 million Ghana cedis to the joint venture, while Azontaba contributed 15 million Ghana cedis. For this reason, Azontaba is the majority shareholder of 56% shares, while SADA owns minority shares of 44%. But Gilbert Eddy says SADA contributed a total of 50 million Ghana cedis to the joint venture.
So the 50 million that was paid, 3 million of it was actually for mobilization of outgrowers, supporting those facilities that the outgrowers need, which a company may not have been interested, because the company will want to go into direct production. But we are insisting that instead of using the resources to go into direct production, you must use outgrowers. So the cost of using the outgrowers was to be borne by a separate fund, which was 3 million. So SADA's actual contribution as equity was 12 million.
Gilbert Eddy was SADA's CEO at the time the joint venture was entered into. He remained SADA's CEO for almost a year afterwards, but he says he does not know whether Azontaba paid their contribution of the 50 million Ghana cedis.
You are aware of the amount of money SADA paid into this joint venture?
Yes.
The total being 50 million.
Exactly, I know that one.
But you don't know how much Azontaba paid?
Azontaba was to pay 50 million, but they were not to pay to me.
Did they pay the 50 million?
Not to me.
Not to you, I know, not to you. The 50 million SADA paid was not paid to you. It was not paid into your account. It was not paid into SADA account, but you are aware.
You see, what would have happened is that at the board meeting, this question that you are asking can be relevant. At the SADA board meeting, the SADA board could have invited its representative on that company's board of directors to answer this question.
Are you not part of the SADA board? Were you not part of it?
I know, but that question didn't come up.
And nobody in the SADA board tried to find out whether Sontaba really paid or not?
The board hasn't really sat down to discuss. At the time that I was there, you know, the issue, let's see, there was a time when there was a schedule for the representatives on Asuntaba to come and brief the board. But something went wrong and that thing didn't happen.
According to the rollout plan of the company, commercial guinea fowl production was supposed to have started last year. But when Joy News visited the northern region and the upper west region, the structures for the guinea fowl production were still under construction. The contractors had left the sites. At the time of our visits, the only complete structure was the upper east region. This structure was already in existence before the joint venture company came into being. It was owned and operated by Asuntaba before the company entered into a joint venture with SADA. Our investigation, however, revealed that the company was paid by JIDA to train 2,000 youth in guinea fowl rearing. The company was paid over 1,700,000 Ghana cedis, but it did not train any youth. Attempts to get Asuntaba to respond whether or not they contributed any amount to the joint venture with SADA have failed. For Joy News, Manasseh Azore Arene reporting.
The Minister of Education Tuesday met executives of the Polytechnic Teachers Association of Ghana in an attempt to address their concerns. The Polytechnic teachers last week threatened to strike if government fails to initiate processes for the payment of their book and research allowances. Porter gave government an ultimatum which ended Tuesday, April 22. Government intends scrapping the allowances and replacing it with a national research fund. Both university and polytechnic teachers have kicked against this move, and POTAC President James Dugra has joined us over the telephone. Hello, James.
Hello, sister.
And so what went on within that meeting with the Ministry of Education Tuesday?
Hello?
Hello, James.
Yes, I'm with you.
Right, thanks for joining us. What went on between you and the Ministry of Education at the meeting on Tuesday?
Oh, thank you very much. Yesterday when we met, the agenda was that they were going to do discussions because the ministry and then the UTAC, that's the University Teachers Association of Ghana, they met last week, the day we were also organizing our press conference. So they gave a letter that UTAC and POTAC should meet. So we met and it was a discussion. We wanted to, withdraw because we didn't know what they discussed, and they were coming to discuss it with us. So later on, the minister, accepted our view and then abrogated the discussions. Then quickly asked us to submit documents proving that the books and research allowance is part of our condition of service or it is our entitlement. And lo and behold, when we were going, we carried those documents with our appointment letters indicating that the book and research allowance is our entitlement, and it is in our condition of service, Article 11.14 and then .13, 11.13. So we photocopied those documents and then we gave them out to the ministry. And according to the minister, Labour Commission gave them up to the 14th of May to come back and report to whatever transpired between them and then POTAC and then therefore UTAC. They try to tie both of us together because it is the same thing that we are all fighting for.
So what happens now?
Also, the issue is that because we saw that the minister has given some will, and even the deputy minister, Honorable Ablapa, even apologized for not acknowledging the fact that we were not there at the first meeting with the Labour Commission. And we accepted it, and they showed some sign of goodwill and then reassurance since they asked for our appointment letter, our documents to prove that these monies have been paid. Even though we were hesitant to provide those documents because they should rather have them. But later on, we saw that we don't want to pull and pull. So we gave out the documents to them, and then we closed, and we are waiting patiently for for the 14th to elapse, and we see what happens.
In other words, you've called off your sweat to strike because you gave a Tuesday deadline.
Yes, we gave the Tuesday, that's the 22nd, that after that, if we hear nothing from government, we are going to advise ourselves. And now that they have also come out to give us another date that by the 14th, they will go and report to Labour Commission. So we are waiting. We've not yet called it off. The issue is that we have not started it, but we have suspended our ultimatum to the 14th of May.
I see. You mentioned also that the Ministry of Education has shown goodwill. This goodwill goes in the direction of restoring the book and research allowance?
Yeah, our bid is the payment of the money. And if they have asked for the documents, and the documents we produced were not fictitious, they were negotiated, and even there was a communique issued out on the 8th of May 2008, all those, and the letters written by the then Deputy Minister of Finance, Professor Jam, to them, and other letters from the Minister of Education, urging controller to work out the payment. So we think it is a way forward than whenever we wrote letters, about 3 of them, there wasn't acknowledgement of receipt of those letters. So with this one, we think that we are going forward. But if they have not asked for us and they have, thrown away our request and continue with the discussion, that is, then we know that they were not ready to dialogue with POTAC.
Here on News Today. Thank you very much for your time here on News Today, James. Absolutely. We'll move on to some other stories. And the District Assembly's Common Fund is the major source of funding for most of the assemblies, especially those in the deprived districts, because of their inability to raise their own funds to execute projects. The district chief executive for Nkwanta South was therefore disappointed that they are yet to receive the fourth and first quarter of 2013 and 2014 funds. The situation, he said, is really affecting development in the district. This was contained in a sessional address delivered on his behalf by the district coordinating director Al-Hassan Yusuf.
The district has also over the years been faced with lack of potable water. On course to eradicate this menace, he announced that hydrological studies, drilling and construction of 15 boreholes in 15 selected communities are currently underway. He added that other communities will follow suit in the provision of clean drinking water to the people, as well as eradicate waterborne diseases. The district chief executive said under his leadership, the assembly will use all channels possible to make sure a favorable environment for socioeconomic activities in the district is created through development. He also stated that the year under review witnessed the construction of 3-unit classroom blocks at Dawakura DA Primary, Blackie Junction DA Primary and Ebrubruwa JHS. According to him, all the buildings are ready for use but yet to be commissioned. He added that the fund from the district's development fund has been channeled towards the reshaping of Nyambong, Kechebi, Alukpacha, Abriwanko and Gekrong feeder roads. The chief executive reiterated government's commitment to the completion of the Eastern Corridor roads. He said the Assembly's new mechanisms of generating funds has within the first quarter of 2014 collected 35,029 Ghana cedis, representing 30% for its target of 2014. Komlado's report for Joy News.
You're watching News Today with me, Kemini Nyamani Amana. I'll be right back. Thank you very much for staying on here on News Today. Now, the head of credit risk at the First Capital Plus Limited, Dr. Charles Akwete, is asking small and medium-scale enterprises to reposition themselves in order to benefit from credit facilities from financial institutions in the country.
In terms of access to credit, SMEs do not have too much of a problem. The banks are willing to give out loans. The other financial institutions are willing to give out loans. The challenge has been with their readiness, the poor records, the high-risk nature of their businesses. Most of them don't even understand what they are doing. And the few who manage to get the facilities, most of them, what they do is to divert those facilities. In terms of, they tell you I'm doing A, and they use the money for B. So repayments become a problem, and that is affecting access to credit. That is why most of them are not able to meet their credit criteria.
Traders at Winchi in the Bunahafo region have pledged to support the Municipal Assembly to reach the assembly of unauthorized structures and hawkers cause a nuisance. The traders made the pledge at a Social Accountability Forum dubbed Town Hall meeting organized by the Assembly at Winchi. Nesta Kafuya Juma sasu the meeting for Joy News.
The Town Hall meeting is designed to discuss a wide range of issues and also keep the people abreast with development trends within each MMDA. It is also aimed at cultivating the spirit of transparency and accountability in order to promote good governance at the local level. Social accountability is also one of the fundamental requirements for assessing the District Development Fund and Urban Development Grant, which are major sources of funding for MMDAs. As a fulfillment of this obligation, the Wenchi Municipal Assembly organized a town hall meeting for the first quarter of 2014. Heads of departments, traders, artisans, various identifiable groups among others attended to air their concerns. In his presentation, the Municipal Chief Executive for Winchi, Hakibu Dauda, said the Assembly will continue to run a transparent and accountable administration in a bid to develop the municipality. He noted that the most challenging issue to the Assembly is the dwindling revenue inflows, especially from their internal sources. The MCE stressed that the Assembly is reactivating the Revenue Task Force to plug the loopholes in the system. He added that revenue collectors who fail to meet their target will have to make up the difference or have their salaries suspended. Hakibu Dauda bemoaned the proliferation of unauthorized structures, especially at reserved areas. He hinted that his administration is taking immediate steps to purge the town of illegal structures.
We intend to reactivate our revenue task force plus the loopholes in the system. We are also increasingly challenged by the proliferation of unauthorized structures in all corners of the town. This unhealthy development marks of indiscipline on the part of developers, for which we have taken immediate action to purge the town.
General Motors has asked the U.S. court to bar some lawsuits relating to its recall over faulty ignition switches. The faulty switches could turn off the engine, disabling the airbags, and have been linked to at least a dozen deaths. The recall was issued earlier this year, but GM has admitted some employees knew about the problem as early as 2004. GM has asked the court to ban cases alleging purely economic damages due to the recall. It does not affect cases relating to accidents or injury. The firm has been hit by various lawsuits since the recalls began this year. The Ukraine crisis have grabbed both international and local headlines in the last few weeks, though Ukraine is not on the minds of many Ghanaians, perhaps because of its location on the world map. Senior fellow at the Lagos Center for International Affairs and Diplomacy, Dr. Vladimir Nchidanzu, believes the African continent, which suffered immensely due to the previous Cold Wars, will not be spared again. He spoke to my colleague Marian Ture.
If we believe that whatever is happening far off somewhere does not affect us, it's a child's play, because if more arms and ammunition is sent to the place, some filters to Africa, we are to lose. Again, note that irredentism is something we should fear in Africa. When Kosovo started, I wrote articles and I'm saying we are setting the stage for a world where subnational groups will ask for independence and whatnot. And that's what is happening. South Ossetia did the same thing, 2008. They wanted to get out of Georgia because Georgia wanted to be part of Europe, just because Kosovo had done it. Transnistria, which is now in Moldova, they've done it. Abkhazia, they said Nagorno-Karabakh. So it's like when we set the trail in international politics, we've got to be very careful. What shows that several other irredentist groups in Africa, and especially so because Africa is a hodgepodge of states. There's not a single state in Africa which is totally unique. We are all a hodgepodge of states. The 57 tribes in Ghana were put together and say, call yourself Ghanaians. More than 400 tribes in Nigeria were put together, call yourself Nigerians. Who knows whether the Kosovos, the Crimeas and the whatnots will not play in Africa. So we must be very careful when we say the thing is far off. We are all in the same boat in the international system.
The U.S. Secretary of State has warned of further sanctions on Russia if it does not de-escalate tensions in Ukraine. In a phone call with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, John Kerry expressed deep concern over the lack of positive Russian steps. Russia blames Kiev's leader for the collapse of last week's Geneva Accord. The U.S. is to provide an additional $50 million for political and economic reforms in Ukraine, including $11 million to help run the presidential election due on May 25. Meanwhile, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has said the U.S. is running the show in Ukraine. Lavrov told Russia today it was quite telling that Kiev had relaunched its anti-terror operation against pro-Russian gunmen during a visit by U.S. Vice President Joe Biden. The silent rivalry between Ghana's two leading female movie makers, Leda Johnson and Shirley Frimpong-Manso, seems to have received an interesting twist during the premiere of Shirley's latest production, Love or Something Like That. Here's more.
The movie Love or Something Like That, which features multiple award-winning Ghanaian actor John Dumelo, Jocelyn Dumas and a host of talented actors, tells an emotional story about a young surgeon. She reunites with her ex-boyfriend and as a result throws her world into absolute chaos when she makes a horrible discovery about her past and what could be the end of a great career and a beautiful marriage. Concerning reports making rounds that there is a silent rivalry between the two renowned filmmakers, Shirley Frimpong-Manso and Leda Johnson, there is very little one can lay hands on. But after recently picking an award for a role he played in Leda Johnson's movie, it came as a surprise when John Dumelo admitted openly to Shirley's assertion that his role in Love or Something Like That was his best yet. John then went ahead to add the following.
I just want to say there is Hollywood, there's Bollywood, and then there's Shirley Frimpong-Manso making Africa proud.
Well, I refrain from commenting on John's statement, but we are watching closely.
Did he choose a side now? Our closing headlines. Government says the planned implementation of a 17.5% VAT levy on banking services will not start next month, as had been widely reported. Barcelona will be able to find more news on myjoyonline.com. Thank you very much for staying through the hour. My name is Kemini Nyamani Amano. Enjoy the rest of our broadcast.